Welcome back to another episode of the How to Film Skiing Masterclass. In this episode, we're going to dive into everything about pre-production and storytelling in ski films. So stick around, it's going to be a good time. On the surface, pre-production and storytelling maybe isn't the most exciting part of the ski filmmaking process, but I promise you it is one of the most important, and hopefully you'll see why throughout this episode. My background is in documentaries, so I really care about the storytelling side of things because I think there are so many beautiful ski films out there that capture the exciting and gnarly lines, but my specialty really lies in the storytelling side of things. So, some of the tips here may be structured more towards a documentary-styled ski film, working with athletes and telling their stories, versus going out and capturing the gnarliest footage of people hucking backflips down a mountain. But even if you're interested in making the more gnarly types of ski films, I promise you that if you stick around, there are still valuable tips that you can learn here that you can use for your ski films later. There just might be a little bit of a documentary tinge to it. Before we dive into the depths of storytelling, we're going to just begin with an overview on what pre-production is. Pre-production is basically just planning out your shoot before you go and do it. This allows you to go out and execute things at a way more efficient manner, and as we've learned in the past episodes, if you're not efficient and you're out in the snow, things can get cold, batteries can die, and it can be a really difficult time to create a successful ski film if you're not planned and prepared. By laying the groundwork beforehand, this not only allows you to capture the thrill and excitement of skiing, but maybe tell a more compelling story that resonates with your audience. So, at the end of the day, this pre-production process is important. And in this episode, we're gonna cover everything from how to get brands involved, how to begin those conversations with brands and getting resources and getting funding, all the way to the in-depth storytelling tips that I like to plan before I go out and create a shoot or create a film for myself. And the first place I always start is by gathering reference images. Gathering visual inspiration can happen in all sorts of forms. Me personally, I get a lot of inspiration from music, from podcasts, from magazines, from articles that I'll read online, but getting images and gathering reference films can be a really exciting process to kind of get your brain in that creative mode, to start to brainstorm what it is that you want to create for yourself. I'm not saying go out and copy the things that you're seeing, but use those to kind of get inspiration on what types of images and what types of stories you might want to share. The film that I'll be talking about over the next 3 episodes, we're doing pre-production, production, and post-production all on the same film, so you'll get to see beginning to end how I create an award-winning documentary. This is a film called Unseen Peaks. It's a documentary about a blind ice climber, skier, climber named Addie, who after enduring a lot of trauma and discrimination because of her blindness, is trying to find freedom in the outdoors.
The outdoors is a place that makes me feel completely free. It is a place where I find the most peace and clarity. It's where I feel the most alive and grounded.
I like to focus on a lot of films about accessibility and inclusion in outdoor sports, so this may not be the gnarliest ski film you ever see, but it hopefully will give insights into a different side of winter sports culture that you may not be familiar with. Because I come from a storytelling background, I like to not just gather images that look pretty, but actually come together and help make a story. This isn't sponsored, but a product that I like to use online to kind of get all of these images in one place is Canva. Canva allows me to sort of build pitch decks to communicate my ideas, but mostly just gets me excited about putting all of these images and films in one place. In this document, I will write a story overview, I'll write information I know about the character I'm going to be filming, I'll be writing different scenes that I might want to be filming. This is kind of the one-stop shop for me to put everything in. Now that you have your films and your photos assembled to kind of get visual inspiration from, the next point I like to touch on is crafting a story arc. At the heart of every great film is a compelling story. In ski filmmaking, your story is what your audience engages with beyond just the shots that they're seeing. And you can do this through a lot of different ways. Through interviews, through voiceover, through in-the-moment interviews, watching the action unfold on the expedition in real time. When creating a narrative, it's important to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. This is sort of a general 3-act structure that you will see in a lot of other types of art, like plays and traditional movies, but in ski filmmaking, it's still just as important. I always like to start with the purpose of my film when creating a story arc. Is the goal of the film to entertain? Is it to educate? Or is it to inspire? This film, Unseen Peaks, that we're planning is partially about inspiration. It's If you watched episode 1, you know maybe what types of shots to get, what type of angles to get, wide, medium, tight shots, low angles, and high angles. But if you want to get really specific and create a list maybe on your phone or in a notebook, documenting exactly that you want a shot of the boot going through the snow as they're walking to the ski lift, or a shot of them putting on goggles, that can really help make things more efficient when you're out there. However, a lot of things change when they're out there, so even if you do make a specific shot list, be open to things changing and trying new things. However, I will say for commercials, if you're planning a commercial ski film, definitely plan your shot list, because going out there and looking unprofessional by not knowing what you're doing can really hurt your reputation. So make sure you know exactly what you want to get, and you can go in and start directing other people to do things, or if you're doing it all yourself, making sure you know exactly what you need to get so the client is happy and you're happy. For documentaries, I think it's okay to be a little more lax, but for commercials, when there's a specific look and a specific product that they're trying to sell, make sure you're selling that product. That's a good segue to bring us into the sponsorship integration, not sponsorship for YouTube, so don't skip ahead. This is about getting brands involved in your ski film. Sponsors can do a lot of things for your ski film. It can add resources, add funding, it can add an extra layer of credibility. It might bring a new athlete into your community by connecting you with this athlete and this brand. But at the end of it all, your job, if a sponsor is involved, is to help sell that sponsor's product. If you do have a sponsor on board, it's important in this pre-production process to really start to bring them into these discussions and start figuring out ways that you can naturally integrate and weave their products into this film. Branded documentaries are the main portion of my work, and I think it's really important to make sure that the audience doesn't feel like they're being sold something, but rather the integration is very seamless and very natural. Skiers need helmets, skiers need boots, skiers need skis. So companies that make things in that realm might be willing to sign on to your project, especially if you have a professional athlete that's already on their ski team involved. When it comes to finding a brand to get involved in your film, I won't go too deep into it, but reaching out to creative directors, marketing directors, or professional athletes that are already signed on that company ski team can go a long way in connecting you to these brands. For this project, Unseen Peaks, we had a couple companies involved, but we actually didn't have any products that were sent to us, and that was intentional. I do a lot of projects for brands, and this was sort of a passion project because I really believe and sharing stories about accessibility in the outdoors. And I actually didn't want a brand to get involved because I didn't want the process to get diluted in any way. I wanted to share the story that exactly deserved to be shared. Sometimes when you have brands involved, other voices can get involved, the project can change and it can adapt, and that's okay, especially if it's your job and you're doing it for a paycheck. But I think it's also important to make sure that as a filmmaker, you have some things that you're really passionate about and you want to share, and you can devote your own time and your own resources to this. That's what Unseen Peaks was. But if you do want to see some behind the scenes of a sponsored shoot, I did a shoot for La Sportiva last winter that you can also find here on this YouTube channel if you're interested in seeing what product integrated ski shoots might look like. We've talked about a lot of things already. We've talked about planning the story, gathering inspiration, figuring out how to craft a narrative, bringing sponsors involved, and the final point I want to touch on is probably the most important when it comes to moving into the production stage, and that is planning out your schedule. So a well-planned production schedule can do a lot of things. It can make the project a lot smoother and successful, but it can also be really challenging to stick to, because when filming skiing, the weather is kind of what we're planning around. And unless you're an expert snow scientist, you may not know months in advance what the snow is going to do. So I think with ski filmmaking, there sometimes needs to be some flexibility involved. When you factor in for unexpected delays or maybe having a contingency plan, so let's say on Wednesday you're going to go out and shoot a powder day with your star athlete and it's going to be awesome. But on Tuesday it doesn't snow. So making sure if you already have the time to schedule something to film on Wednesday, if you can't film a powder day and it's icy and the conditions aren't good, maybe opt for an interview instead. So if you can't do this, make sure you still are hitting something because you're both free and available to film something. This becomes really important once you start to have longer projects and multiple days of filming, because obviously you still, in the end, need to capture everything. But if you don't have the luxury of filming powder every single day and you need to be filming powder every single day, finding some creative ways around it can be beneficial as well. So as we wrap up this video, I want to encourage you, as I have every single past video, to not just watch this video, sit back and don't do anything. If you're really passionate about making a ski film, take this advice and put it into practice. No matter how much I ramble at you and talk at you, the real progress happens as a filmmaker when you go out and you do it for yourself. If you do some work between now and the next video, I promise you'll see some growth as a filmmaker. And in the next video, we're gonna go through the behind the scenes production of Unseen Peaks. You'll notice in the next video that I do not have a mustache, and that's actually because we shot this a year ago, last winter. And the reason we did this is because I wanted to make sure that I was teaching you about a film that actually mattered, that actually did a film festival tour, that got some awards, and that was sharing a meaningful story in the outdoor industry. As much as I would love to give behind the scenes of me shooting my friend skiing, I feel like it's more impactful and it's more meaningful if that production and that process ended up resulting in something that's interesting. In the next episode, we're gonna walk through on the ground filming. Well, on the snow filming. We're gonna break out of this room, we're gonna hit the slopes. You might see some filming of ice climbing as well, because that was a part of this process. But ultimately, this is about showing you how I'm on the ground, planning and filming an actual documentary. Whether you do this as a hobby or want to be a professional ski filmmaker like me, either way, there are good things coming, so stick around. Until then, keep planning, keep dreaming, go out and make something. I love you, I'm proud of you. Have the best day ever.